All right, pod fans, hello and welcome to another exciting edition of No Coast Defenders. I was going to say offenders, which is not right.
Oh, are we getting X-rated tonight?
The future is X-rated, in the words of the great Matthew Good. But yeah, I'm here with Dan and Tim as usual, and they don't know this, but even though Loki was great this week, we're just going to talk about Mars Attacks because I know how much Dan loves that film. But all joking aside, Tim, let's start with you. General
Yeah.
impressions of this episode?
It was great. It was definitely a lot more dialogue heavy than the previous episode, but I didn't mind it. They needed to take the time and officially explain how time travel works to them. And with Loki's fantastic sail demonstration, they were able to do just that. I thought they did a great job. And just the episode as a whole was very intriguing, between the Renaissance Fair and Loki trying to tell Morbius his idea, and then the climactic or the climax scene in the future. That was very, very interesting. The only thing I didn't care for about the episode, was the fact that when he revealed, I'm going to use this loosely, Lady Loki, quote unquote. I don't know. Between the lighting and the camera angle, it came off very CW-ish. I don't know. It's weird to say, but that's just the impression I got, and it didn't sit right for me. But I can look past that, I guess. And overall, it was just a great episode, great climactic finish, and I can't wait to see where it leads.
It's interesting you say very CW-ish because I actually had flashbacks to Chuck, and maybe because it was in a big box store, and of course Chuck was in a big box electronics store. So that was where my mind went, was it because
I said the same damn thing to myself, and I was like, nobody will get that reference. I forgot you love that show.
I ride hard for Chuck. Dan, what were your general impressions of the episode?
I was bored for first 40 minutes of the episode, to be honest. It's not even that it was dialogue driven, it's that I didn't find the dialogue to be, it didn't really grab me, I guess. And I like the chemistry, they're great and stuff like that, but as the story is moving, I think I was so hyped after episode 1, because episode 1 to me was probably the most perfect thing that Marvel has turned out yet, especially when it comes to the Disney Plus shows. That just kind of going into this lull for 40 minutes was a bit much for me, honestly. That it really picked up, for the fight scenes in the last 10 minutes there with the reveal. And I thought that was kind of cool. It could go one of two ways. I'm wondering if we really are just riding hard with Young Avengers at this point, and it's seeming that way. Yeah, it was fine. I don't know. I messaged you guys that Lady Loki's coming, and so that was kind of funny for my pick there. But yeah, it was all right.
Well, and the Lady Loki thing is interesting, and Tim, of course, alluded at it. But since it is the character is credited in one market as Enchantress.
Yes, is that the Mexican market? Is that what it was?
Maybe Honduras, maybe.
Yeah,
Not specifically the Enchantress, just Sylvie.
Oh yeah, that's right. Sorry, Sylvie.
Right.
Which is one of the Enchantress variations. But of course, someone else pointed out, and I didn't look back to verify it, but on one of the sheets Loki is floating through, you can see where Sylvie's last name and has the same last name as Loki, not the Odinson name, but of the Frost Giant. Yep. So if it was the Oklahoma Enchantress, that wouldn't be the right last name. So it could be mislead and it's not Lady Loki, or they could just have combined Lady Loki and the Sylvia Enchantress into one character, completely possible. But of course, Loki did make a point to mention enchantment when they were talking. So, and she did say, "Do not call me that," when referred to as Loki. So they set it up interestingly enough. But
And also, there had to be a reason for that. I don't believe it's actually a variation of him, because they took the time to explain his powers in depth,
Yeah.
before they went into the field. So, even he pointed out that the mind control thing isn't in his docket. So
Yeah, that was an interesting component there too, and I'm wondering if much like the character, the show is going to be much about misdirection too, for the audience, and I'm all for it to an extent, and I'm very invested. I just kind of want to know what the hell's going on. I know that there's 4 episodes left, and they don't seem to waste any minutes, but that was an interesting setup there, and it's the one time I kind of wish we had an end credit scene. Because I was like, I need a little bit more to get through for this one.
I'm sure we'll get them eventually.
I only wanted one for this episode. The rest can go to hell. I just wanted this one.
well, the pattern for the last 2 shows was it was the last 2 episodes had end credit scenes, right?
Mhm.
So they might keep that up this time, but these episodes are a little bit longer in the pacing. I know you said you were a little bit bored, Dan, but I found the dialogue riveting, especially when it comes to, I'm going to say thinly veiled, and I don't even know if it was that disguised, but the overall arching theme of religion when talking about the timekeepers. And that was really brought home. I think the first time I really noticed it was when you were in the judge's chambers and you can see the imagery of the timekeepers. And it was very reminiscent of like a picture of Jesus behind your desk. And then you go to the lobby a scene or 2 later, and Mobius and Loki are talking in front of the statues. And I'm like, okay, they didn't focus on that like religious thematic imagery as much in the first episode, but they really got into this one, and they did it. Yeah, Dan.
Oh, the office scene, when they're in the chambers there, I did really, really love that scene. I thought that there was just something really special, as they're going through all the knickknacks and the mementos. I thought that was a really cool moment, and it also showed, not only did it show the power dynamic and everything else, but it just the exchange between the two of them was so good.
Yeah, I think that scene was extremely important just because the questions Mobius asked, like, I don't remember this piece, and about the rings on the table from the glass. Mobius, it feels like he was reset. That's what I was taking from that scene. And I don't know, the chemistry between Renslayer and Mobius was palpable, but I don't know if that's just because Owen Wilson is so naturally charismatic that it came through in that scene, or if we were supposed to get like they have a history that we're alluding to.
So I had I went 2 different directions with each watch. So I was with you the first watch I had where he'd been reset, and that's why I didn't remember. But then I kind of went to like, is the other person bringing back these artifacts Kang? Because they do have to bring them in somehow, and maybe not in the show, but down the road. And so that would also make sense that he's bringing them to when he was a timekeeper himself, or for TVA, And so that kind of made sense to me too. And I was wondering if they were kind of hinting at this other half of things that we might not see yet, but that's also kind of coexisting.
I went the reverse of you. I thought Kang first, and then he was swiped. But Tim, you had thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, not thoughts per se, but it's funny that you mentioned Kang being the one that picks up those artifacts, because I can totally picture them bringing him in here similar to the way they brought in Ronan in Captain Marvel. So kind of like a hired gun almost.
Right.
And Greg, I don't know if you know this. It didn't exactly go anywhere, or it's not exactly connected to anything per se, except one line of dialogue that Mobius said. I don't know if you noticed that Miss Minutes, her clock face is actually sectioned off into 16 partitions and not 12.
Oh, I missed that. That's an awesome
I missed that
catch.
as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't have caught that either, but someone on Twitter found that, and I guess it just goes along with what Mobius said about time flowing differently in the TVA.
Well, and I think the time flowing differently at the TVA is very important. And I've heard quite a few theories about the idea that we don't know what the event that caused the timeline to go out of whack was.
Yeah.
Are we leading up to that event? Are we going to see that event? Because obviously the TVA is outside of time. I think that's why they made it a point to go forward to meet the variant in this episode. So is that what happened? Are we setting up that catastrophe in the timeline?
I think that a lot's going to be alluded to here, and well, no, I think I'm wrong now. For some reason, I thought Ant-Man came out next year, but it doesn't. So it's another 2 years. So it wouldn't make sense to wait until Ant-Man at this point. I thought maybe they're setting up Quantumania, and something within the quantum realm is what sent things off. But given how late it's coming out, I'm completely wrong.
Yeah, and I was just sitting here thinking just how much I called it. I knew there was going to be something important with those charges. And this was the episode that, not only did we get to see how they actually work to the full extent of, like, you see stuff disappearing from the timeline, but with Lady Loki, bombing the timeline as well. And I just sat there thinking, like, how many Minutemen did she have to murder to get all those charges? My God.
That was so many charges. But yeah, as she was setting off the charges, I was like, well, Tim nailed that one, was the first thought I had watching it.
What points do you think were affected?
I've formed this grand theory about where I think the series is going. And I don't think the points mattered too much that were affected, but just that it got the Minutemen out of the TVA.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, with just how pointed it was with Mobius not remembering the rings and not remembering, and Rhineslayer hinting at she had other assets. It just, everything about it kind of sat a little funky with me. And then when we met the variant and she clearly had a great understanding of how the TVA works, I thought Mobius is repeating himself. That variant, I just feel, has worked with Mobius, with the TVA. And like the fact that he didn't have to say anything to Rhineslayer, she just knew instantly what he wanted to do when they had Loki. It just made me think he is repeating himself. She knows it, but she can't say anything and just has to hope it plays out differently with this. So I think this variant has worked with the TVA and felt something was suspicious, which obviously our Loki felt something was suspicious. That's why he wanted to get those records the library wouldn't let him have. So it just feels like she's not the bad guy in this. I mean,
so kind of similar to the way that Caecilius learned under the Ancient One and then switch sides and all that.
Yeah, and my original theory was that the Time Lords had been replaced by Kang, but as Dan pointed out, that Ant-Man movie where we know we're getting Kang is so far away.
Yeah.
And Loki is the first series they've announced a season 2 for.
So, wow, really?
And so my theory is that this variant is going to confront the Time Lords, or maybe there's not even Time Lords. Maybe they're fictional figureheads and only Rhineslayer knows this. And Mobius and Lady Loki, the variant, Enchantress, whoever she's going to play out to be, they discovered this. Mobius was reset. And then she's now going to do something, and that's going to lead right to multiverse of madness. I mean, we've got the writer working on this, so that is like my loose theory. I'm not going to make it my Mephisto Reed Richards lock of the week because I have something more fun for that. But that's the theory I've been playing around with. But I didn't go back and rewatch the first episode, so I was just kind of going on memory on this. So maybe Wednesday after I watch the third, maybe I'll go back and watch all 3 and see if my theory still holds up. But maybe I won't need to. Maybe it'll be blown up to pieces in this next episode. But like that whole conversation where she didn't want to rule the TVA, it just felt so much like she was alluding to there being something bigger at stakes. And if the Lokis are as clever as the Lokis want themselves to believe, it would make sense that both of them discovered something because they couldn't just accept what Mobius is accepting on faith.
I kind of wonder if the timekeepers aren't real in this, and it's somebody has a lot more power than we've seen thus far. And so I think Renslayer is going to really end up being like the formidable villain in the end. That's just a hunch I have. And she's not only covering some stuff up, but she's also pulling the strings and not for goodness.
I mean, that right there can be your attachment to Kang.
Yeah.
I just hope they come full circle and make a joke that like Loki was right about the timekeepers being lizards.
Mm-hmm. Well, then they've said numerous things like that along those lines. That's why I'm kind of like, huh? Because I mean, it's one thing. The timekeepers aren't huge in the comics, and it's a very loose sort of development, anyways. And so the TVA is also like really a nothing burger there, so they can do whatever they want with this thing. And I think that's why it's been so difficult for me to watch it, because it's the first time where I'm like, I have no idea what could possibly happen. And I like that at the same time. So it's really just kind of one of those things where like, how much are they going to mind fuck us before we know what's happening?
Right.
Yeah. Well, the Renslayer thing, there's so many shows in the history of television where you could tell a character is going to play a significance based on the quality of actor they get.
Mm-hmm.
You can't do that with these Marvel shows. I mean, top to bottom, this is just a cast and like just stellar. So we can't predict, oh yeah, no, she's going to go on to some significance, which is great, but frustrating at the same time, because I do love trying to figure this stuff out. And
yeah, this is
wrong.
I can't even pull out like my Mephisto standing like I did for Vision or WandaVision there, because it's like I have nothing tied to anything here other than just watching it and being like, I have no idea. I've read all the fan theories, I've read like what everybody's saying, and it's more speculation what's to come after the show as opposed to what's going to happen during the show, meaning they also don't know shit, but they need to churn out articles. So it's really an interesting one where Marvel kind of has everybody in the throes here because nobody knows.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. I do have a question for you guys. Dan, I'll start with you. Do we see Mobius on a jet ski before this series is over, or do we have to wait till season 2?
I hope it's next episode. I will say it's next episode. They're going to take a little vacation together.
What do you think about the odds of Mobius on the jet ski?
Oh, it's a no-brainer. It's going to happen. But unlike Dan, I think it's going to happen. Obviously, the safe answer is going to be, in the resolution of the, or maybe he'll ride one in the climax. Go all Pierce Brosnan and James Bond riding the tidal wave.
I will say they've got us with this show. You have to pay attention every second. It's as much as I wasn't entertained this last episode, I still found both watches I had to pay attention, to see if I missed anything. And even with Tim reviewing, the clock there, I obviously missed something. So it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, especially I think some of the references, because when the variant is like switching bodies and she's in the associate and Loki asks who they are, the associate looks down at the name and says, I'm Kevin, which is like a Buffy the Vampire reference from when Spike is wearing a jacket with the name Kevin in it. And the director's a huge Buffy fan. And so that's a clear nod to Buffy, but it's not like throwing it over your head. It's not like saying the Scooby Gang, which would have been hilarious for Loki to refer to the Minutemen as Scooby Gang. But it's almost more rewarding how subtle these things are. I didn't catch it because I've only seen 7 once, but apparently the song in the library was the song one of the characters in 7 is listening to as well. So they're doing subtle references to so much, even outside of the MCU in this series right now.
And once again, Casey in eating his lunch, his drink was, you guessed it, discontinued.
Oh, I missed what he was drinking, but there was so much of Mobius's soda in this episode.
Yeah, I think it was just like coconut water or something like that.
Okay. Not a Zima.
No.
I have many Azima stories.
That's not surprising at all.
No, you know what would have been cool to see him drinking is Orbits. Do you remember Orbits?
Oh yes.
Orbits would be very fitting for the TVA too.
Yeah.
There's a reason Orbits didn't last, and it's that it's a water with chunks of stuff in it. So
Yeah.
yeah, the episode overall was really interesting. I like the small exchange we got from Hunter B-15 and Loki until she was possessed.
Mhm.
I want to see more of that pairing, and I
Mhm.
didn't know I wanted more of that pairing until that moment.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I think this is the time I'm gonna do a lot more homework, I think, and just dive into the comic stash. It's kind of cool that I'm being pushed to that level, but yeah, it's a fun challenge.
Well,
Yeah,
the homeworks. Yeah, Tim.
Yeah, she's in the end, I can't see her as more than just a one-trick pony of a character, but the actress is nailing it. She definitely comes off as a fucking badass, and yeah, she definitely works well with Hiddleston, especially in that huddle scene. How she threw him so much shade, calling him was it like a something mistake, like a cosmic mistake.
Yeah, she's been on him, and maybe that's why I didn't necessarily think I wanted to see the pairing when it's those groups. But then when it was just the two of them, I was like, oh yeah, no, the chemistry's there as well. So we just have
Yeah.
chemistry up and down this cast.
Something that's interesting to think about. It's kind of been in the back of my head is in the comics, Kang kills the timekeepers, and so I'm wondering if we've already seen that event, and maybe that's what's led to some of this too. Like we obviously hasn't seen it, and we may not see it down the road. We may find out that they don't exist anymore, and then the Eternals, might lead to what happened, and because we now have these two groupings involved that really have no reason that we know about yet, and so I mean that would tie up Renslayer connection too, like very well. So it's just a big possibility, like this whole thing is orchestrated. We're going to kind of go backwards, I guess.
Yeah, that's the really fun thing about them being outside of time is literally any time theory is possible in this.
Yeah.
Yeah, we could go back to the beginning when the timekeepers came. I had wondered about that, about Kang having slayed the timekeepers, especially you'd mentioned earlier, there's not much of the timekeepers in the comic books.
Mhm.
And if you try and look up the timekeepers, like Wikipedia just brings you the article on Kang, where I think they're mentioned twice in the Wikipedia article.
And then they take you to the Loki show.
Yeah. So that would perfectly set up like the Renslayer, and in my idea that Mobius was reset. Like, yes, he was reset because he found out Kang had taken over the timekeepers. It could.
I wonder also, like,
I don't
nobody
know.
stated that.
Oh, go ahead, Dan.
Oh, go ahead, Tim. It's your birthday.
No, I was just gonna. Shush. I was just gonna ask if anyone had seen the IMDb page and seen Jonathan Major's name in there. Do we know?
No,
that?
I try to avoid looking at the
Yeah.
page. Is it on there?
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, well, now I'm gonna have to search. I try so hard
Yeah,
because I don't want
tempted
to
to
ruin
look.
any. Yeah.
Well, and the Marvel shows have been really good about not revealing too much of the cast before they're in an episode too.
Mhm.
So if he shows up in like a bonus scene in the final one, his name won't appear until that episode on the IMDb. They're amazingly tight gripped on that. And
there's very little dialogue that's ever been wasted on the character Loki, and so that's why he's hip to what's going on in many ways, I think. So like when he says something isn't existing, like I genuinely believe the character, like he's got the feeling like this doesn't exist. And so I pay a lot of attention to that dialogue because he's one of the very few characters where there's been like zero wasted dialogue since his first appearance in the MCU, you know? And he's just written in such a manner that you kind of just take it as face value.
Well, and before I got set on this theory that Mobius and the variant had worked together before, I was on the idea where when Mobius and Loki are debating the order and Loki says a world without chaos is boring. And I was like, of course, he's the trickster god. Of course, the world without chaos is fucking boring to him. And then I was thinking if every Loki variant has that one trait in common, then of course none of them would want timekeepers deciding the fate of the world. And that enough would be reason for this Lady Loki variant to want to destroy the timekeepers.
Yeah.
In which case she is maybe the villain of the show. I don't know. I guess it depends on where you stand on the idea of 3 space lizards controlling fate.
You got to grapple with that first before figuring out what else you'll accept.
So I looked, no Jonathan Majors, but for your own good, don't look. Just don't look.
Jesus Christ, Tim.
If I had nickel for every time I heard that.
I just want to hear you do the Jeff Goldblum, "It's my birthday" from Ragnarok in the ship.
Maybe next
You
year.
said not to look, so now I have to look, and I'm going to have a live on air first glance at what I'm seeing.
You don't have to. This isn't on me anymore.
Well, we all know that when somebody tells me not to do something, I have to do something. So,
He's doing it.
I am doing it.
Yeah.
I don't know who I'm supposed to see, though. Nobody's surprised me yet, Tim. Maybe that's a good thing.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh, young Sylvie.
Oh, why'd you say it out loud?
Oh, is that what it was?
Yes.
Interesting.
Can we? I know we don't usually edit these. Can we like bleep out and just pretend he said a cuss?
No, because by the time people watch this or hear this, they'll be watching the episode that she's in. Because I think that they would just put it the episode before. What's your take on the Enchantress? Do you think that's a reality, or do you think that's a intentional fake out?
Me? Him?
Yeah, anybody.
Oh, I have no idea. I only first found out the Enchantress by playing Lego Marvel Superheroes 2. Because I was so used to, hearing the Enchantress, I think DC. So I didn't even realize Marvel had their own Enchantress.
Marvel has 2 Enchantresses, is the fun thing.
Yeah. It is Marvel. So.
Yeah, I'm curious because we're going the whole Young Avengers route. It seems through these movies that obviously we're going to at some point, but I've long been saying I think it's probably the next Disney Plus show that hasn't been slated yet because there was an unnamed show, and so I'm wondering if there's a build up for that. So I'm curious just to see if the elements of this lead to that too, and the world building for that as well. So I wasn't ready to jump on the Enchantress right away. This could very much just be Lady Loki, and we might see some things that got her here as well. So I'm actually fine not settling on either one until they tell me what to think.
Yeah, I'm actually kind of convinced it's not either. It's not either Enchantress version or it's not Lady Loki as we know him in the comic books. I just feel like it's going to be a combination of Sylvie Enchantress and Lady Loki. Once they went blonde, it obviously wasn't going to be comic book Lady Loki since it was a body that was meant for Lady Sif that was taken over by Loki. So I think it's going to be, and the other thing we're not forgetting, we've mentioned it, but in this exact moment, we don't know where in time this variant comes from. So young Sylvie could be from the current MCU timeline. And we're seeing the older version of her in the future.
Mm-hmm. And, I think it's kind of cool that the Leafy son was the last name for the one roll call there. Loki's actual last name, outside Odin's son. And I think it'd be actually really fun if, we saw his arc, as Thor's brother. So let's see his arc as this sibling. I think that'd be kind of cool too.
Yeah, maybe we see something with a few of the Loki variants. I know they showed a couple, including Hulk Loki and Frost Giant Loki
and Tour de France Loki.
Well, and like in hipster wizard Loki, that was, I think, the one that the internet, because they couldn't really figure out what it was.
Well, that one, if it's the one that I'm thinking of, it shows that he has blue skin. So I think that's if he, stayed with the Frost Giants.
Oh yeah, no, that was Frost Giant, but there was one he had like a beard and he looked like he was wearing booties. I saw someone say it looked like it was if Loki joined 303.
Yeah, it's almost like we're gonna get a series of like what ifs, but just Loki style.
Yeah, maybe it's gonna be like the web of the spider, but it's just Loki's instead of Spider-Man variations.
Yeah.
And they take down the timekeepers. That could be fun.
Well, given how Funko likes to release their pops, I imagine we'll know much sooner than the show wants us to.
That could very well be true, unless Marvel hasn't released the characters to Funko yet.
At the end of the day, it's about money. They're already making money on Disney Plus.
I would think that, but remember how long it took Disney to get Baby Yoda merchandise out there?
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to spoil that surprise, and what a cash cow Baby Yoda is.
Yeah, so right now...
Half my wardrobe.
Yeah, so right now, Funko's only released, Loki, Mobius, B-15, and what was her name? Ross Slayer?
Yeah.
Runslayer, yeah.
Yeah. With Miss Minutes as like a little pop buddy, which I think is pretty neat. So yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they come out with like spoilerific characters as like convention exclusives, much like they did for Tommy and Billy.
Yep.
From Monk Vision.
Yeah, that's what I'm just having flashbacks to that. I remember on some post where I was like, would have been nice if they waited a week. Everybody like jumped on me, like you didn't know this was gonna happen. No, none of us knew shit that was gonna happen in that show. That's the thing. Funko just solidified what was gonna happen.
Yeah, that's the series. It just leaves so much, especially knowing it's gonna lead into Doctor Strange. I think that's the only thing I know for sure is that this leads into the Doctor Strange movie. But even with the Ant-Man movie being 2 years away, there was a time not long ago in the MCU where 2 years till the next movie wasn't that long.
Yeah.
So maybe we're still going to get Kang because he could make an appearance in Doctor Strange still.
Well, what's interesting too is with this being season 2 in production right now, we may not get anything wrapped up. We may not have any answers by the end of the season because, if we have a season 2 coming, they don't owe us anything. So unlike those other shows that had a sense of, completion, they can just toy with us as much as they want, especially with it setting up the Multiverse of Madness and the next Ant-Man movie. They can do whatever they want with us and just keep us on the hook and keep us tuning in.
Yeah. Before I started throwing Kang into it in my mind, I did think that it was just going to lead to the Lady Loki variant destroying the Timekeepers, and then Strange, Wanda, who we know is a Nexus being, and Loki doing a buddy film where they're fixing the multiverse. Mm-hmm. And then season 2 is just another buddy season with Mobius and Loki fixing the stuff that they were, the smaller stuff, basically going back to hunting variants. But at the same time, who knows? Maybe it's Loki that destroys the timeline, not Lady Loki, and he's the major villain going forward.
Yeah.
Now, if I may ask you a question about Doctor Strange, but not about Loki, how do you think they're going to introduce America Chavez?
I've been kind of toying with that for a while, and I'm actually wondering if maybe we'll see her get introduced through Miss Marvel.
Possibly, yeah.
I think that's a good route. That's a tough one because she's kind of an outlier when it comes to these characters. And I would say if we had a Squirrel Girl show coming or something like that, it would make sense. Or it would even make sense for Easter egg and the Falcon Winter Soldier. But Based on the upcoming projects, I'd have to say Miss Marvel, I think.
I'd be okay with that.
Do they introduce her like they did Miles Morales to the 616 and just combined a couple timelines? So now we have a new, younger Captain America running around.
I think we're gonna get to the point where that's what we're seeing, because there's so much retconning that needs to be done to introduce some of these characters that I think that that's probably where we're heading, especially as we introduce these younger generation of characters.
I mean, it feels like you're leading to the twins coming back from a multiverse somewhere. So maybe she's from the same multiverse as the twins, and Wanda being a Nexus being just merges two multiverses to one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think because they've alluded to the West Coast Avengers, which she's also in that. So as they go with this younger, we're going to see them all in the pair ups and team ups, and it's just depending on which project they do and how soon it's going to happen, I guess. But my assumption would be if they do the West Coast Avengers or Young Avengers, where that's where we're going to see it, but we'll see it come out of one of these bigger movies where all of a sudden all these youngsters are unleashed, kind of thing. Even maybe in an end credit scene.
Yeah, end credit scene. Now I have a question. Marvel fatigue, we touched upon last week, and people are just talking a lot about it. We're not experiencing it. My overall superhero fatigue, but not Marvel fatigue. But as we get into more and more weird, funky comic book storylines, is the regular fan going to be turned off by this stuff?
I think so. And you mean like the non-comic fans who just watch it for entertainment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so, because the direction they're going is really nerdy now, and it's in some cases, if you want to be informed about it, you do got to do a little reading. But I know some of those folks who have actually started showing up at different comic shops asking for trades and stuff because that piqued their interest in wanting to know more about this stuff. So I think go both ways, but the ones who've been here for the whole ride, I think they're now starting to say like, hey, maybe there's something to this comic book stuff, and if they can get a trade over a single issue for this older stuff, because I've had countless people hitting me up in the past, I think since WandaVision, like, hey, do you have this? Do you have this? And just wanting to read it to kind of get their own idea about it, because they hear so many different theories. So I think it could actually go in a different direction where there's some of us who've been doing the reading and collecting all that stuff, and we get it, and now they're just going to introduce new people to that realm, which is awesome for our local comic shops, to say the least.
Tim, what are your thoughts on that?
Dan put it perfectly. I wasn't expecting to be called on, honestly. Yeah, I don't know. I'd like to say that's not the case, that they won't be turned off, but yeah, like Dan said, it's entirely possible if things start to get too weird, because at the end of the day, some people like just that nonstop action and they associate that directly with superhero movies. So while I appreciate the route they're going with, like Dan said, these nerdy new storylines, it's at the end of the day you have to sit back and acknowledge that that's a risk for them, because they've captivated this fan base for 10 plus years, and you got to think like 2/3 of these people aren't, well, that 2/3 is maybe a stretch, but a good chunk of these people are not inherently comic book fans. So yeah, props to them for actually giving the risk. And at the end of the day, if it works, yeah, I think it'll just help out everyone all around, from movie theaters to LCSs and online retailers, and just anyone involved in it's.
What's interesting though is so I noticed like Entertainment Weekly does it, and even like Marvel puts the stuff out. They do like the prelude to the movie as the movie's coming out.
Yeah.
And so that's even got people reading, because it's interesting when you see those in the line at a store like a Wegmans or Walmart, you know, but the prelude to the story. So here's like a cliff notes of where they're going, how they got here, kind of thing, and that's how they kind of reel people into it, so that they're not so, you know, oh, what's this about?
Yeah.
Which I think is also really smart marketing wise, but it's kind of interesting to see. You know, I go over to like a friend's house, they don't read anything outside of like a Yahoo article, and they're sitting on their coffee table, you know, like, well, I'll say like 2 years ago, because I haven't really seen anybody. But you know, that component's interesting. But you know, Greg, you talk about the Marvel fatigue, and I thought that it was going to wear off for a lot of people, given that we went so long without projects and stuff. But then with Disney Plus having all these shows in a row, and then the nonstop articles and headlines everywhere, I think it's worse now than it was when we were getting consistent material.
Yeah, it's
Or even
interesting.
when we didn't have any.
It's interesting how mainstream it's become. I mean, Vanity Fair has a podcast that tracks the Marvel stuff. I mean, Vanity fucking Fair is tracking Marvel. But even like, I didn't even think about this theory of it getting too crazy for people until like we're talking about how you introduce American Chavez and merging multiverses, and that just feels natural for the way they're going, that can be brought up. And I think the MCU's done it really well gradually. I mean, Tony Stark just, it is believable that mech suits are coming in real life combat. Captain America just
especially when you show the failures too.
Yeah.
That clip of, you know, North Korea, Hammer Industries, that it's more important to the believability of it all than people might think.
Yeah, they've weaned into it, then they kind of weaned into space and magic.
Yeah.
And I mean, then Guardians introduces gods out in space. So and then time travel comes. So they've really like so slowly ramped it up that it's more palpable to the average person. But then when every mainstream source is covering this stuff, it just, yes, the fatigue can definitely be there, but it's going to help normalize it so you can do Doctor Strange in the multiverse.
You know, I can tell when a friend who's not an avid comic reader has just read too many articles, when they just like text me and say, so what's the deal with this? Like, you can tell when they're burnt out from reading all the crap and the different opinions. And it's funny, but what I often do, because I like to introduce new readers, is, you know, I give them a couple issue numbers, knowing full well they won't check them out, but hoping one night they get drunk on eBay and just get them anyways, or hit up a local shop they drive by. But you can tell when they've read too much, because it's just like, seriously, I'm sick of reading. Tell me what's up.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. Thankfully, I don't get bombarded with text messages about it like you do. So,
yeah, at some point I just became that nerd, so I'll take it.
At some point was all your life, you mean?
Fair enough.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into the Mephisto Reed Richards lock. Do you have a good one for us, Dan?
We will see Renslayer in her comic book suit.
Okay.
By episode 6.
Tim?
That's oddly specific, Dan.
Yeah.
Oddly specific.
It's got to be by episode 6, because otherwise we're talking season 2.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm torn. My gut instinct is telling me that, you know, Renslayer does have King behind the scenes of stuff, and they are in on it together. But at the same time, I'm moving towards the Enchantress too. But for right now, the King thing is taking the top spot this week.
Okay. For me, my Mephisto Reed Richards lock of the week is in the vein of those two characters we did not get to see. And it is that we will get Age of Apocalypse Wolverine. And he's being used by the variant to help destroy the Minutemen. And that's why they had all the stab wounds that they mentioned in the church in the first episode.
Holy shit. My man. That totally just threw me for a loop.
Uh,
Hey, you know what? Why not? I've been
why
saying
not?
since Falcon Winter Soldier, we got Madripoor, we got the X's on the fences. I think the X-Men are there already. I actually think Agent Sharon Carter is Mystique, so why not throw Wolvie in the
I
mix
mean,
here?
it's entirely possible because there is that one floor on the elevator dial that does have an X on it,
Mhm.
in the middle there. So why the hell not?
I dig that.
Now, obviously, that was just a joke lock, but I did, in full transparency, watching Loki the first time in that first episode in the church when they mentioned same MO in the stabs. That's where my mind went first, was Wolverine. But since it wasn't slashing, it was just stabs. That's not really a berserker Wolverine MO. So I don't actually believe that, but that was where my mind first went. But
Could be
probably
Weapon X
because,
Wolverine.
yeah, could be X-23.
Ooh,
She's going to be in the Young Avengers, not even in the X-Men.
I can go with that theory. I like that.
I've had worse theories in both comic book films and life. So,
It's
Dan, before we wrap up, anything else you want to touch upon about this episode?
no, I'm gonna watch it again before Wednesday, just to see. I watched it when I was in a down mood after a work meeting and didn't like it. So like maybe that's why. So I watched it when I was in a great mood the second time, and I still felt the same way. So um, with that said, I'm just happy to have these shows and be able to watch them, be able to talk about it with you guys each week.
Tim, how about yourself?
Yeah, just for those of you who are still on the fence about these weird type of storylines, dealing with physics and you know um, and all this metaphysics stuff, just keep an open mind. Just keep an open mind. It all comes full circle. Like Mordo always says, the bill comes due. Um, so yeah, so you'll be satisfied. Just hang in there, baby.
Yeah, I'll just add on to that quickly. The weird storylines are more fun to discuss because
They
anything can
really
happen.
are.
Yeah.
Yes,
So enjoy the fuck out of it. It's so good.
yes. How often are you guys seeing a normal superhero movie a French kid eating blue bubble gum that was given to him by the devil?
That existed for only a very
Yep.
short amount of time in
Yeah,
2050. Like, yeah,
yeah.
so
I'm
much
in.
fun. All right, Dan, you got anything to plug before we get out of here?
Just happy birthday to our buddy Tim here. Check
Oh,
out Greg's
thanks.
cool points and just live Moss.
Way to put
I
over
still
Taco
think
Bell.
you. I still think you need that forehead tattoo.
It's coming.
You didn't have me mock that up for you for nothing.
Like Loki, I'm very purposeful.
Yeah, glorious purpose.
All right, Tim, anything you want to put over on our way out?
I'm good. Just our normal Gary B, the casual comic guy. He was great on our last episode of my and Dan's show, our trip to the MCU. We'll be back on Wednesday with just a shorter episode, not talking about anything specific except our giveaway and talking about our question of the week last week, um, which was oh let's ask you real quick. Who do you think had the best portrayal in the MCU?
I thought about this a lot when I saw it up on Facebook, and I thought about everyone you guys have put up, and I've never responded to any of them because I hate all my answers I come up with and don't want to embarrass myself and then come on here and embarrass myself. But if I'm going to say best portrayal, do you guys want like the best movie character? Or do you guys want the best, most comic book accurate? Because I think those are two
What
different answers.
what you think that means?
Man, I'm going to say the Guardians as a whole are the best movie portrayal, even though they're not necessarily most comic book accurate, although they've altered the comic books to match the movie ones. But just
Yeah,
top to bottom, and all those characters work individually, but they don't work as well if they're not together. I
yeah,
mean, I think Rocket's the perfect foil in so many situations. That's why he works well in that group. He works well paired with Thor. He worked well with like just the ragtag Avengers in the last Avengers film. And
Yeah.
Drax, I mean, good on Dave Bautista for basically playing a meathead as a meathead and just doing a killer job with it. So yeah, up and down is going to be the Guardians as the best
Nice.
portrayal. If I were to pick most comic book accurate, I think I'd go Renner's Hawkeye.
Really?
Yeah, it's either Renner's Hawkeye or ScarJo's Natasha.
So one of those two is mine that I'm revealing this week.
Yeah, and we don't get enough Renner, so that one kind of disqualified. And obviously, he has the secret family in the movies he doesn't have in the comic books. But just the spirit of what that character means to the Avengers as the human with a bow who went through the redemption story. But man, they didn't change movie Natasha much from the comic books. She's badass spy, so
just a little less murdery.
Yes.
So far.
Yeah, so far.
I think we're about to see it be a whole lot more murder.
Yeah. Yeah. But
if I'd have to pick one, it'd be ScarJo. I've already told you guys I think she's the heart of those first couple phases of the MCU. But I have a soft spot for Hawkeye, so
nice. Well, past that, just another shout out to our very own Rhinos Comics here in Rochester, New York. Support local, tip your waitress, try the veal.
The veal's gonna be delicious, I can promise you that much. All right, I don't have too much. Dan mentioned cool points. Also, my friends like cool shit. Dan joined me last week when we had some issues with Battle of the Ballads. He talked comic book collecting, buying, selling on spec. Really good episode, which kind of applies to everything. It got me excited for the future episode. I'm going to have Tim come on and talk Pokemon cards, or just Pokemon in general. I think we're going to talk.
Yep.
So they got me excited about that. My sister and I will be recording one tomorrow. She wants to talk about her kids and motherhood in general. And I'm excited for that because the whole point of my friends like cool shit is whatever the hell you guys love, I want to hear you guys talk about it. So that'll be a fun one from my sister. Obviously, I'm very familiar with her kids, but I'm also very familiar with how much she loves them. And that's going to be exciting because I think you'll hear the joy in her voice as she's talking about it. So excited for that.
Very cool.
And we wrap up Battle of the Ballads 1999 tomorrow as well.
Yeah, 99, and then we do the best of the 90s before we take a short hiatus because my brother's getting married. So that'll be fun. I have an interesting idea I'm going to spring on you when we pick the best song of the 90s. So,
of course.
All right. Thank you guys. This has been an absolute pleasure. I'm so excited to talk episode 3 next week and to also return to Reading Rex, which we kind of skipped to get right to the episode, and Marry Date Show, which we skipped kind of get to the episode. Also, I didn't have one, so that worked out well.
Very nice.
All right. Have a wonderful night, guys.
You too, Fair.
Good, my friend.